This is Luke Girgis on the Brag podcast, and today we're with Veronica Milsom of Veronica and Lewis Triple J fame. Veronica, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Very excited to be here. I bought a prop, a baby.
So cute.
If you can see the
What's up?
child.
What? His or her name?
Her name is Zoe, and although I keep accidentally calling her Sophie, which makes me think that maybe we shouldn't have called her Zoe. But anyway, there was too many other Sophies, you know. Sophie's too plain. Sorry if your name's Sophie and you're listening.
Well, the idea is if there's too many Sophies, you've actually offended the maximum amount of people.
Yeah, that's true, actually. That was not very well thought out by me.
Did you give birth during COVID? How old's Zoe?
So she's 5 weeks old, which actually it's the only way I can keep track of time is knowing how old she is. Which was really weird. I was listening the other day to a podcast where Jen Fricker was talking about how people are going to have this post-quarantine reveal of what they will look like. You know, for her, she's doing the Hemsworth diet app and she's really shredding. And for me, it will be that I've had a baby. Like, I'll be like, hey, I got this. And everyone will be like, oh, you were just enormously large last time we saw you. And you're like, yeah, it's a couple of months old, can sit up by itself. But yeah, it was really strange giving birth during this time because they kicked us out of the hospital straight away. That was one of the weirder things. We got checked for our temperature and stuff before we went in, 1,000 questions about whether we had coronavirus, which, you know, if we did, I could still give birth, but I wasn't allowed anyone in there with me. And they were a little bit like, yeah, jury's out if your kid's okay. We think it might be. There aren't that many cases. But yeah, turns out I didn't have it, which was ideal. And she came pretty quickly, like in an hour and a half.
Awesome.
And then so we were just out the next morning.
So what, were you really nervous? Like I feel, so I have two kids as well, and both pregnancies, even though everything's fine, you're always just terrified something's not fine. I can't imagine the level of extra anxiety that would have been during a COVID time.
Oh, 100%. Especially because for some reason the hospital that I was at had converted their birth unit on the other side of where we were to an ICU. So on the way in, you were seeing all these people that were terrified that they might have it. And you're like, this isn't ideal. But I guess if any ward in the hospital was going to be near the COVID patients, the babies are okay, I guess, because they're the ones that aren't being affected.
Yeah. And we know that now, but we kind of didn't know at the time. It was always like, are kids safe?
Yeah. I feel like they still think that a bit. Like we don't know the long-term ramifications. Yeah. Not that we want to get into that sort of, you can't think too much about it, right? Just got to go on what we have.
So what is your, plans during COVID while you've got restrictions, you got a brand new baby? Is it ideal or is it extra stressful?
Well, you kind of feel bad thinking it's ideal, but it really is. Because as much as I understand that the virus brings real scary ramifications for many people in the world, and also like not just the virus, but for industries like the music industry and comedy industry, but it's also like there's no FOMO. There's nothing for me to miss out on, which is pretty amazing. Plus, there's no strangers weirdly touching your kid, which is a very real thing. Like people get really into just stopping and like touching and looking at a newborn, which is unusual. I remember with Lila, there was a waitress who blessed her and like did some sort of prayer, which, I mean, we don't know what she would have been like if she hadn't been preyed upon like that. But it felt weird at the time.
It is really bizarre that you can just literally go, like, society thinks it's okay to literally just go up and poke and stroke and kiss like a complete stranger because the stranger is under the age of 1.
Yes, and I would never do that. But there are a lot of things to do with, like, I hated breastfeeding in public, so now I never have to do that. I can just secretly be doing it on Zoom, which I'm not right now. Tits are in my bra. But yeah, I was like, Mum said, so if you've got a strong letdown with your milk, why don't you just jizz it out the side and let it all come out and then just keep feeding the baby? And I was like, oh, well, Mum, you can't do that in a cafe. And she was like, well, you don't have to go to a cafe. And I was like, Haha, yes. Thank you once again. Coronavirus.
I can't remember. There was this study that I read about how when mums are anxious during massive times of crisis, it actually affected the success of children when they became adults. And there's this big long study about a volcano that was happening in a town. And then there's this also parallel study about the more time parents spend with their kids, especially in the first 8 months, just touching and kissing and talking to the kid and all of that, it actually also significantly impacts the success of the kid as an adult. So I wonder if a consequence of that, if we're going to have a lot of genius corona babies because the mums have no other choice but to spend heaps of time with
except that maybe they'll be highly anxious.
So we break even.
Which is something cool to look forward to.
Anxious, lots of time.
Yeah. But there's also going to be a lot of babies born from this time, right? Everyone's in lockdown and there's nothing better to do. You've wiped through everything on Netflix and now you're just well, I guess we just got to fuck.
or divorce. I think there's we'll see which stat is bigger.
Yeah, well, that's pretty full on, isn't it? It is really intense. I live with my partner and 2 kids and it's really wild, the idea of just being with one person the whole time. International travel does not prepare you for this kind of thing. Don't you reckon?
Yeah.
I feel like I've been a part of every single Zoom call. I feel like if he drops dead tomorrow, I could pick up his work straight away.
The whole world has inbuilt redundancy now, so it's all good. The partner just steps up.
Yes, exactly. That'll be easy, and it's a great thing for me to know that I can walk into now that I'm completely unemployed, which is, it's a good time to have a baby because it gives me something to do. But also, the baby's going to grow up and then I don't have a career yet. So, I left Triple J at a weird time.
First time you left Triple J was just a maternity leave and you came back after your first child. Why the permanent leave this time?
Oh, dude, I'm so old for Triple J. That was 100% the reason.
Yeah?
Yeah. I was kind of looking forward to not dyeing my hair and stuff, I felt like I was having to be younger than I was, which is just it messes with your mental health after a while. Not that it was serious at all, but it's just you just want to be able to speak freely without self-censoring about playing down your age, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm 35, which isn't ancient, but I couldn't talk about making out with people at schoolies anymore. Didn't feel good,
So I'm curious as to think about the pressure that on-air presenters feel as they get older on air. Whereas people behind the scenes, like Kingsmill's quite old. Yeah. I know Nick is also, I think Nick's in his mid-30s as well.
Yeah.
Nick Finderlay. I wonder why there's such a disparity in that feeling of pressure for people on air versus people actually curating the music that the young people are listening to.
Yeah, well, I guess you're more the face of what's going on. It's about your attitude, the way you think, what you do, the way you talk, the way you communicate with listeners, because ultimately it's about that relationship. But it's so valuable to have the, people with experience like Kingsmill and Finlay's behind the scenes kind of steering the ship, essentially, because there's going to be this whole new a lot of people that are fresh blood, which they can kind of guide through, which I definitely needed when I first started at Triple J. And it also means that there's some consistency in the way that everyone sort of sounds and the way that the station comes together as a whole.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I think it was it Zan Rowe when there was that big, obviously, cycle of presenters, I think it was last year, and she came out and she said, we're supposed to cycle because it's a youth station. We need young people on air.
Yeah.
We have Double J and we have all of these other stations. And was there ever a thought that you might go over to Double J or stay within the ABC ecosystem?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Except that I still could. That's the thing. I still would quite like the idea of doing stuff with Double J. They have significantly less presenters, but there's always great fill-in opportunities for when Zan's away, which, the gal loves to holiday. If you follow her on Instagram, she's mad for it. In fact, if you're ever wondering about a place like Japan, where should I go in Japan? Zan has a PDF document for pretty much every country. She's very organized. She has like a list of best places to eat and places to see. I've got many of her PDFs over the time. So that's still an opportunity. And I think I'll still work with the ABC, but I also reckon it's really healthy to get out of there and like potentially explore what people are doing on commercial networks and just in commercial spaces to keep yourself, I don't know, I would never want to be an ABC lifer. I would never want to be someone who stayed there forever. Because I think it's important to know what the competition is doing.
Yeah, Triple J, or the ABC as a whole, also limits your earning potential, right? Because you get your salary for doing the show and then you literally can't do anything else.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, the salaries, like, across compared to the rest of the industry is not great. And I know that it's like a very much an ongoing joke at Triple J that no one earns any money. There are a lot of perks, you know. You get festival tickets and tickets to gigs and stuff. But, yeah, you have to report. If you ever get anything in the mail which looks like it might be worth more than $50, you have to report it, and then it gets taken from you.
Shit, every time? Or is it a judgment call?
It's a judgment call because sometimes you don't really know. But, like, you might get sent a whole heap of chocolates or something from a chocolate company. And in that case, you just have to share it with everyone in the office, which is nice, you know, ultimately. You're like, I kind of would like the chocolates to myself sometimes as well.
Have you seen?
And that's where commercial radio comes in.
Yeah, totally. And you know, Ben and Liam have just made the jump to Nova. I think I saw Matt and Alex are now got a deal with SCA Podcast One, launching a podcast. There seems to be that sort of generation of Triple J. I guess Triple J presenters now making that leap. Is that something you've got your eye on as well?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say no because that's where I've come from. I came from commercial radio. Like I worked at Nova in Melbourne and Nova in Perth. I also worked at Smooth 94.5 in Perth, which is just the best music. It is a hit parade, 99% success rate. And I was like the youngest person working there by probably, I'd say 30 years or something at the time. So I really pitched my voice down and pretended that I was much older than I was, Veronica.
Opposite problem than at Triple J.
Oh, yes, that's exactly right. I mean, it really fucked with my head. I just want to be me, you know?
Yeah. So how did you then, you know, team up with Lewis and end up getting the gig at Triple J?
So Lewis and I did a show together on the ABC called Hungry Beast, which was like a thing that Andrew Denton ran where it got 19 people who were complete newcomers to the TV industry and got us to create a TV show, which was horrendous in the first season, but it got better. People really romantically remember it. They're like, yeah, Hungry Beast had a 10-year reunion. And I was like, oof, you're forgetting that it was pretty shit for a bit. But yeah, we got back together on that show, but we went to high school together in Geelong. So that's how we actually really know each other. So we're Geelong buddies. And then we've been keeping in contact a lot heaps. We met out the back of my house in the laneway because we felt weird about him coming in because he's not allowed. But then we like coincidentally like met in the laneway. And I was just hearing from him all about what it's been like for presenting Triple J, which is crazy. Like the idea of having no regular segments, no interviews really, because no one's releasing, well, there are some people, but people aren't really releasing that much music and they're not touring. So which terrifies me, the idea of doing a radio show where there would just be nothing on every day, but he loves it.
Yeah. I mean, how did you guys decide how to program that show every day? Like, what was the system and the dynamic between you two?
Well, we had a producer. So at Triple J, you just have one producer, whereas at commercial radio stations, you have about 10 or something, which is wild for the drive show. Nah, not really. That's an exaggeration, but they have a lot. And you have kind of like staple things every day, like the regular segments, which they would be one or two every day, which are just great because you know they're a lock. And then there's usually an interview every day and then just talk back and stuff around it, or trying to work out different ways to provide like content around something that had happened in our lives or something that happened in the world. and we just have like editorial meeting 11 o'clock every day, which also is very much a difference between Triple J and commercial radio, because we would meet so early, like way too early, 4 hours before the show was going to start. And on commercial radio, it's like, I think they meet, at 2 or something. I think Kate, Tim and Marty don't even come into the office until really late.
So why the difference there?
Because we just didn't have any support. Like, we didn't have,
right.
Oh no, I'm going to get shot down if my boss listens to this. No, we had lots of support. It just doesn't have the same budget,
Didn't have the same resources.
Yeah, exactly. The resources at Triple J are just like tiny. There's barely, there's like a couple of people who upload stuff, stories to the web, for example. Not like at Brag. You guys have hundreds of people working on stories.
Oh, multiple floors. We got a whole skyscraper of stuff.
Yeah.
What was it like starting the show versus how it was when it was fully mature and fully popular? Did you get as much editorial control and could do all the skits and segments and things that you wanted early, or did you kind of have to earn the trust of the station before they let your ideas pass?
Oh, it was so different by the end. Basically because we discovered that the less you care at Triple J, the more listeners are endeared to you because they're like, you don't seem to give a shit. That's awesome. It's sort of weird. But you could never you could never force that feeling. It's just something that happens after a bunch of years when you kind of want something to go wrong. Like if the computer breaks, I'm like, oh yes, this will be fun.
Yeah.
Whereas
right.
at the very beginning, 5 years early, if the computer had broken, you would shit yourself, and go, oh my God, what are we going to do? But also we learned about what the listeners thought was funny. And that wasn't pre-prepared ideas, like sketches that we'd written up and that were fully produced. Like they hated that, which was really interesting as well. They didn't want you to seem like you had tried to impress them.
How do you get that sentiment and that sort of feedback from listeners? What are the sort of indicators you're looking for?
Brutal texts coming through
Right.
by the dozens, being like, you're not funny, fuck off, you shit. And then you just kind of got the impression over time. Plus people just sort of played along more with you, and you could see that on the text line if it seemed like they were picking up an idea rather than you were forcing it down their throat.
So does that mean you relied on the text line more than, say, socials and sort of listener data, I guess, of whatever sort that comes in?
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know if that was right or wrong to do, but we loved the text line. Lewis never knew what the ratings were, so that data just went out the window. I mean, I barely did. It's not a consideration at Triple J. But, I mean, for us, it probably should be, but it wasn't. And the socials, we didn't even have an Instagram account. We were really crap at doing any of our socials, which I was majorly paranoid about for years. I was like, oh, we should be posting something now. And then I was like, oh, I don't care anymore. It's too difficult. Let's just make a good radio show. But, that's the difference between a lot of shows on Triple J is how much people will care about that social media output. Like some people will never have listened to Ben and Liam, but just follow them on Instagram and just love what they do on that, which maybe that's just also a great and legit way of, creating content for people and be employed by the national broadcaster,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Don't you feel that the safest commercial strategy is to really build the socials, though, for presenters? Because once they leave the station, they have this asset that they can continue to commercialize or use as leverage to get a show at Nova or whatever.
Yeah, well, that was a bit different for Ben and Liam because, and this is like a bit nitty-gritty, but they had their social media before they got to Triple J, so when they're at Fresh. But whereas like Matt and Alex, for example, they became Matt and Alex through Triple J and had their Instagram there, and then ABC owned it.
Yeah,
so
right.
like ABC owned everything Veronica and Lewis that we did. But that's not to say that it's not a reason that we shouldn't have done content, because we were like, yeah, it was never that we were thinking, who cares, because we're not going to own it afterwards.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. Yeah. I'm just thinking, I've got my talent manager hat on, and I'm just thinking, if you're a manager of a radio host and you're negotiating a deal with a presenter, surely one of the biggest sticking points should be, no, you got to let us own the accounts instead of you just taking them. Otherwise, it's fucking 10 years of my on-air time. Like, I've been building this account and I can't take it with me. I would imagine, if it hasn't already happened, that that's become a real sticking negotiating point for a lot of managers. I would guess. I don't know.
I bet. Oh, absolutely. But I don't reckon. I reckon the ABC would sit pretty tight on that because it's worth a lot to them as well. Also, it's just the IP as well as anything else is. You know, an idea that you've thought of at the ABC when you're employed there is theirs.
Yeah. So, what are your? I guess, do you have any plans now after your maternity leave? Are you looking to get a new podcast yourself, or start a stand-up, or start doing stand-up or something? Like, what's on the horizon?
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know how easy it would be to start doing stand-up with 2 kids all the time. I don't know. I think you'd have to have already been doing it. Relies so much on being available at night. Unless you just put them to sleep, snuck away for a quick set.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
It would be hard. What? Have you ever done it?
A little bit. I've done a little bit. I did like a show last year, a solo show, which was stand-up, and mixed with some sort of sketch stuff, which was all about being a first-time parent, which was really fun and hectic. I don't know how I did that in the end with like having a baby plus doing Triple J plus everything else. But yeah, I'm going to be making a podcast, which I kind of can't tell you too much about, except that I have a frozen placenta in my fridge.
Oh, shit.
Freezer, I should say freezer. Yeah, and so that is a part of the podcast. And, you know, I'm looking up lasagna recipes. That's just one episode, but yeah.
When can we expect to hear that? It sounds like we're going to be following you on a pretty day-to-day real-life journey.
Yeah, it's taken up a lot of my time and energy at the moment. It's yeah, as well as Prop here, who's just like adorably sleeping so calmly. It looks like I've just got a doll, but I don't. It's a real kid.
She's just so still. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, she's fine. I think
so cute.
Guarantee. Yeah, I've been putting a lot of effort into it, and it's like a challenge-based thing. And let me tell you, it is ruining my life, this experiment that I'm undertaking with having a child. And yeah, I think it'll be coming out in the next couple of months.
Oh, that's awesome.
Keeping me busy.
All right, we'll make sure we'll get it up on the Brag when it happens so people can hear it. What do you think is going to happen to the comedy scene, you know, now that COVID... I mean, comedians seem like they're going to be just as affected as musicians. I mean, if not more, right? Because I feel like musicians can record records, you know, do live streams. There's things that they can be doing, whereas comedians, yeah, I guess comedians could do skits, but, you know, you can't record a special to no crowd. You can record an album to no crowd.
Yeah, although they, you know, like Stan is doing a special with comedians just setting up cameras in their living rooms, which I imagine would be completely awkward because there's no one laughing.
Yeah.
Like really odd. A little bit like McAuliffe doing his show or Charlie Pickering or whatever, like doing comedy to no audience, which is uncomfortable. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how it happens because I imagine, you know, with pubs and not actually getting, you know, just struggling to stay afloat, I don't imagine they'll be really excited to put a, you know, comedy night on or a DJ on or something. We'll see though. Who knows how it'll all pan out. But I was interested to see that Anne Edmonds did like a Zoom ticketed thing. So you paid to watch her be Helen Badoo, which I was like, oh shit, apparently she sold heaps of tickets. So it's like, that's great if you can make money that way. And people are really enthusiastic to support you when they've got time and, you know.
Was everybody muted who was watching? So could you hear people laugh?
I mean, I didn't watch it, but I assume everyone was muted. Yeah. So you were just essentially like watching her doing a YouTube video or something, but it was exclusive and it was like live and you didn't know if it was going to fuck up, which apparently it did stuff up. It's froze for a time.
Oh, Triple J listeners would have loved it.
Right? Anne probably loved it. She was like, yes, something to, you know. Something went wrong. That's ideal.
Have you been watching the late shows do their shows without crowds, like, Last Week Tonight and The Daily Show and all of those?
I actually really haven't. No, I've been too busy doing other things. Is it awkward?
It's really weird, really interesting, right? So one of my favorite YouTubers is this guy called Philip DeFranco, who does a daily news show, and he is very funny. So he does it in a very funny way. 10, 15 years, how long he's been doing it too. No crowd. He's a YouTuber, him and a camera, and it nails every time, and it's amazing. And then the first time I watched The Daily Show, or Last Week Tonight, I can't remember which one it was, first week they did it, I found it so awkward and so unfunny and uninteresting. And then I was like, oh yeah, this is never going to work. But then I was thinking about it. Well, why can these YouTube kids do it? And why can't the Late Show do it? And why can't the Daily Show do it and all of that? And then I feel like over time, they've almost adapted the same strategies that these funny YouTubers have in the way that the show's edited and the way they deliver the punchlines and things like that. And right now, the last Week Tonight episode I watched was hilarious. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's me as a viewer, I just got used to it. But I feel like they have kind of evolved the way they deliver their jokes so it does land without an audience.
Yeah, right. I mean, you wouldn't want to get too comfortable with that.
Totally.
No laughs. But yeah, I reckon just with the right edit points and music punctuating a joke and stuff, just needing something to lean on that's not a laugh before you move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
It'll be really tricky.
Or just saying something really funny and not pausing. Just being funny, keep talking, and then the hits just keep coming. And then as a viewer, you laugh when you laugh. You don't need to sort of wait for when the laugh should be.
Yes, yeah, you can laugh in your own time, and actually you just have to rely on yourself listening to a joke rather than being like, this is when I laugh. Okay, cool, thanks for letting me know.
Totally.
I've been watching Lost though, so I mean, when you said you're busy being a mum, no, incorrect. I've been busy watching Lost. That's taking up all my screen time. It's the most ridiculous show. I didn't get into it, 15 years ago or whatever when it came out. And boy, howdy, am I now understanding memes and jokes that people say.
Honestly, for the first 3 or 4 seasons, it's one of the best shows ever made, I reckon. And then I've watched the whole thing back to front twice. I still couldn't tell you. I still couldn't tell you what actually happened in the show.
Oh no! But why? Even in the first couple of episodes, why? How did Locke get to use his legs again? That's never explained.
It might get explained.
Oh, does it?
It might get explained. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you know me very well, but I don't spoil things accidentally.
Okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Well done.
Government's going to lift restrictions on Friday. What's your vibe on that, especially with your context?
Ooh, yeah. So what it will actually mean, the restrictions that they're going to lift.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope it's nothing. I hope for people that need to get their employment back that it's something worthwhile and that it means that they can start working again. But I also am like, oh gosh, don't do it too soon. We don't want to be a Singapore. I think I'll probably have a party on Friday night. I'm a pretty cool party girl. Actually, I've been buying stuff that is completely not the sort of person I am. I bought a red leather mini skirt the other day because it was on sale on this website. And I was like, who do I think I am? Who am I remembering myself to be pre-quarantine? Someone who goes to nightclubs all the time? What? Anyway. It's arriving in the mail in 3 weeks or something.
So I guess you're pro lifting these lockouts then, because you get a lot of people that are just so anti, clamp everything down, can't do it, blah, blah.
Well, yeah, it's tricky because it doesn't make it any more safe to see grandparents and stuff. Lots of people will just be like, oh, crazy big Mother's Day or whatever with all of the family. But no, I'm obviously pro seeing friends and drinking wine with them again. But I also am a little bit nervous about it being too soon and everyone just going crazy again. Although, I read what you said about the app, the tracing app, Luke, and you're scared of the government mostly.
Are you downloading the COVID Safe app?
Dude, I downloaded it ages ago. I'm right on board with it.
Yeah, I certainly think the app is an awesome idea, and everyone that downloads it, I get it, but there is no way in hell I'm going to download that app.
Are you?
And I was going to say, I published that opinion piece on the Brag, and I said why I'm not downloading the app. And it is very clear. You talk about feedback you got on the text line. I got a lot of feedback that I am very much in the minority view. I have absolutely no trust in corporations because they have a track record of absolutely exploiting data and manipulating the public. To a point where I don't actually know if my own political views are my own. Like I'll watch a YouTube video that I fucking love and it's awesome and it shares some view, whether it's to the left or the right. And then suddenly I start getting fed very similar views. And then I watch them and I love them and I love them. And then if you watch enough hours of content, your mind's going to get shaped one way or another, whether you're conscious of it or not. And so I just think it's very easy. That's how Trump got in power. It's extremely easy to manipulate people based on their interests, and then you can focus on that interest, tie it into your own political views as a political party, or talk about how the opposition oppose what you love, and you can end up being blind to the bigger picture because you're so caught up in a minor detail. So
that's a couple of leaps ahead, though, isn't it? Like
totally right, totally. Yeah. But so if you look at so this app at the moment, my view, completely safe. The build is great. The rollout's great. The government's doing all the right things. But I look at the track record of corporations and I look at the track record of government, even this government, who is just raided the ABC 10 minutes ago. I just don't have any faith and no reason at all to trust them. You know, everything starts safe and good. And I can't think of an example of a successful company or successful surveillance program done by a government that hasn't escalated beyond where it should. I mean, in 9/11...
Oh, God, he's stuck in 9/11 now.
The US government introduced the Patriot Act, right? They use all these big crisis things to come in and take hold of the public. So my opposition isn't to the current app. I think the current app's awesome, and that's why I think everyone that downloads it, great. But that's not what I oppose. I just oppose the bigger picture. And I know that I'm the minority, but that's kind of how I see it.
So you use Apple products. Like, did you give them your like facial ID and your fingerprint and stuff too? That's one of the things that I feel are a bit like, that's a wild level of having faith.
And that's the problem. I'm not all the way down the rabbit hole. So I'll use a fake name and a fake photo on most socials. I don't have location tracking on 99% of my apps. Yeah. Like, I've turned all that shit off. I do have Face ID. Probably shouldn't, but I trust Apple. Maybe that's a mistake. You know, I just feel like I'm not all the way down the rabbit hole yet, but I could see myself getting there.
Yeah.
I know some people who won't use an iPhone older than an iPhone 7. Younger. Sorry, they only use a iPhone 1 to 7 for those kind of reasons. But, yeah, I'm very nervous about, government taking advantage of a public. And also, I'm in the music industry. My company lost $1 million in 3 days from all the events that got cancelled. Like, I am personally incentivized to make sure these restrictions are lifted as quickly as possible. And the government says, download the app and we'll lift restrictions earlier. I have every personal reason to want this app to work and to be good. But it's not my truth. I don't believe it. And I also, a part of me is also kind of resenting the language because it feels like a bit of blackmail. It's like, if you want to go out and play, you got to download this app. Like, I don't know. I understand I'm the minority.
I don't think so, considering the amount of people that have downloaded the app. You probably are the majority. But were you the sort of person who had pre-Zoom a little sticky thing over your camera on your laptop?
Pre-Zoom and post-Zoom.
Oh, really? So I've just got rid of it now.
Yeah.
Because I remember that one picture where Zuckerberg had it on his, and I was like, if he's doing it, I'm doing it.
Totally. And the thing that if you look at Silicon Valley, all the big CEOs, Zuckerberg included, I won't say all, the ones that I know of, they don't let any of their children use the social media apps. So Jack Dorsey, owner of Twitter, his kids aren't allowed to use Twitter. and Facebook and all of these. Same Zuckerberg doesn't have his kids on Facebook and Twitter and all of these on Instagram. So it's like these guys understand it more than anybody does, including myself, and they're scared of it. Like, what? They built it.
Yeah.
So
I remember that we interviewed a guy on Triple J once who, and this is like a very legit story. This has been told tales of this many times, where he was watching porn, wanking, and he was filmed without him knowing the whole time, and then was blackmailed. And that's one of the reasons also that I put sticky things over, even though not a wanky thing, but just that someone can access your camera. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, it's crazy. I think that this technology is moving a lot faster than legislation and even our own understanding, and so to think that we know everything is I think very naive. And so, you know, when the government releases an app and says we're going to track you, I'm just not going to blindly say yes to that. You know, I might change my mind later as well. That's the other thing.
Oh, you can't now. You put it on the internet. This is the thing.
No, I'm very okay with saying I'm wrong. I'm very happily to be wrong on this. I hope I am wrong, to be honest. That would be ideal.
Dude, I hope you're totally wrong. But yes, I think it's great to question it. And we need, you know, people like you writing articles so that it makes people think about it. Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm so hot. It is a very hot-holding little hot pocket child.
Yeah, is she awake? I think she might be awake.
Oh, really? Is she doing that weird thing where she puts her eyes back in her head and it looks kind of creepy?
I saw those Instagram videos. It's very funny. The one where she was smiling when you were rubbing her head.
She's like amazing. 3 days old then.
So cute. Veronica, thank you so much. How can we follow you on social media? Where do we find you?
Well, I'm the only Veronica Milsom in the world. So Google my name.
Are you really?
And yeah, right. Yeah.
That's amazing. All right, great. There's a lot of people in the world. That's statistically unlikely, you'd imagine.
No, I think it's definitely true. I'm going to just do it right now.
Because you're not the only Milsom in the world, so you'd imagine there'd be somebody else called Veronica.
Yeah, that's true. And I often get contacted by people whose surnames are Milsom, wondering if we're related, which is strange. Because I'm like, well, what do we do with this information even if we are? Yes, I'm on Instagram and Twitter. No, I don't do Twitter, but I'm on there. And Facebook. I also don't really do Facebook, but I'm on there because there's lots of old people and creepy people lurking on Facebook.
And Zuckerberg. But there's Zuckerberg's on Instagram as well. All right, we'll follow you on Instagram. Thank you so much, Veronica. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. See ya.
Oh, on cue.
See ya. Bye.